Hey, hey, hey. Nowadays I'm too cool for a girlfriend. Nowadays I don't know what the world's meant.
Hey guys, today in Worst Rappers in the Game, we will be looking at Demetrius Fuss, also known as Lil Skies. Now to prepare for this video, I listened to Good Grades Bad Habits 2, Alone, and Life of a Dark Rose to see how I feel about his music. So, is Lil Skies one of the worst rappers in the game? Or will I end up liking his music in the end? Well, this is CDTVProductions and that's what we're going to be talking about today. So, is Lil Skies one of the worst rappers in the game? Or not? Let's find out.
Amazing, soak it up like a raisin. Wrist, dancing, sing your shit Titanic. My click full of bandits, grind for that lettuce sandwich.
And for the first section of this video, we're going to be looking at his voice. It's been a while, but I think we found another rapper in this series with an above average voice. What a nice way to kick this off. For how like his actual voice sounds like just at its base, I think the way I'd describe it is he kind of sounds like Nav, if Nav wasn't boring. Like, he has the same kind of nasally voice, but like I said, it's a lot less boring than Nav sounds. I don't know if that's a crazy comparison, I haven't listened to much Nav, but that's just kind of how it sounds to me from what I have heard. Skies is one of those rappers that can pull off melodic sing rapping, which he usually does without any overt autotune, which I really appreciate because that's usually found with the melodic style. But he can also do some straight up rapping as well. If you go to his earlier tapes, he actually raps quite a lot. And that's something I like how he does both of the styles, and for the most part, vocally, these sound pretty good. The first thing I have to mention is his harmonizing and his hooks, because that's probably one of the most enjoyable aspects of his music. Seriously, one of the best things about the Life of a Dark Rose mixtape is the catchy hooks. And his other two projects have great hooks too. Whether it's the auto-tune singing on Big Money, the wonderfully harmonized vocals on The Click, or the hook on Garden, which is backed up by these kind of distorted vocals in the background, they just all sound great.
Now they salty, see me winning, now they wanna stop me. Came from nothing, now we fucking floss.
Not to mention the insanely captivating hook you heard on the intro for this video with Nowadays. That song has been on repeat for me ever since I started researching for this video. Skies and Landon Cube kill it with that chorus.
Nowadays I'm too cool for a girlfriend.
But like I said, Skies can rap too, and I almost think I actually like his rapping more than his melodic style of singing. I'm not too sure, but I think I do. When I hear these really uplifting songs like Some Kind of Love or Life, it really makes me wonder why he doesn't make these type of songs more often, because his voice fits in perfectly with the inspirational tone of these songs.
Who we are, yeah. Look, I scream fuck you and your speculation. My dedication got me shining with no hesitation.
For the most part, Skies has a more than bearable voice. It's actually pretty enjoyable. However, of course, there still are some downsides. Sometimes, especially on his newest project, he can sound a little bit monotonous. And this is an issue that mainly shows up during the verses. I guess it's to kind of fit the kind of emo aesthetic that a lot of the songs on Life of a Dark Rose have. But all I'm asking is that you just switch up your delivery every so often to keep me interested. I mean, the song Red Roses was an absolute drag for me. Yep, sound the trigger warnings again, because I know that's like one of the biggest hits from the album, but I really don't like it. And that's because he uses the same low-key delivery for so long during the verses. The best part of that song was Landon Cube for me, who turns in another amazing performance, by the way. Every song I've heard, I've never heard any of his own songs, but his two features on Life of a Dark Rose, incredible. And on Red Roses, it was because he completely switched up the sound of that track, and that was for the best. It was just, no offense to Skies, but he didn't really switch it up, and he was on for so long before Landon Cube came in, and it really dragged. This also happens on the first 2 minutes of his song News. The auto-droning he does on here is incredibly boring until he decides to switch it up with some rapping in the second verse.
Since I'm up, they wanna come around. I shut them down. I get love on the east side. Yeah. I get love on the west side.
Sometimes he just has an issue of either using a boring delivery or keeping the exact same tone throughout the majority of a song, and it does make some of them kind of tedious. But I mostly enjoy what Skies has to offer vocally. I'm gonna give Lil Skies a 7.5 out of 10 for his voice. He's got some stuff to work on for sure, but there's definitely some real talent here vocally. And for part 2, we're gonna be looking at Lil Skies' flow. As for his flow, this was another segment where I could say I was fairly impressed. As I said before, Skies can make rapping tracks, but he also does a fair amount of singing tracks. And what this shows us is he can pull off a decent variety of flow styles. If we're talking about his rapping flows, my absolute favourite has to be on the song Russell. I did not expect to hear Skies over such a dark, looming beat, but he uses his flow and his voice in a way so that it actually sounds really good. I mean, his flow on this song just matches the vibe perfectly.
I'm like, oh man, hit the slow dance. We ain't got a romance, we ain't got a hold hands. Niggas quick to speak about what they don't know.
Then there's the song Some Way, which starts off kind of average in terms of flow, but really picks up towards the second verse. He kind of goes off and raps with a bit more of an aggressive tone in that verse. It sounds really good. As for his singing flows, these are mostly good as well. Songs such as Lettuce Sandwich in 2016 show some really catchy auto-tune laced flows. And then you've got songs like Always Lit, which have a very low-key and smooth flow that fits the beat perfectly. I definitely think Skies performs pretty well in both of these aspects. One big issue I have with some of his tracks though is kind of like his delivery, he just refuses to change up his flows on some songs, and this can result again in boring tracks. This appears to happen the most on his Life of a Dark Rose project. Songs like Boss Up, Strictly Business, and Lust have so much potential, but his flows remain relatively samey throughout the verses, and that does make them kind of uninteresting.
Not a lot of love, rolling in the coupe when she was rolling out the drugs. Looking for the wine, girl, you know that
That's really the biggest issue, because he really doesn't flow badly like 95% of the time. It's just sometimes he refuses to switch up his flows, and that can ruin some tracks for me. I'm gonna give Lil Skies a 7 out of 10 for this segment. I do like that he's shown he can provide a variety of flows, and he does so fairly well. He knows how to kill a beat when he needs to. It's just, like I said, maybe he needs to work on switching it up a little bit more, especially on his most recent project. In part 3, we already know it's going to be the lowest scoring segment in this video because it pretty much always is, but we have the lyrics. Now, lyrics is Skies' weakest point. I know, who saw that coming? That is pretty much to be expected in this series. But he's not super weak lyrically, he's just one of those mid-range rappers in my opinion lyrically. The song I probably enjoyed the most in terms of its writing was Life, off of his Alone project. It's not like super intricate in terms of wordplay or metaphors or anything like that. It's just a really nice story that he tells on there. He basically tells us pretty much the whole story of his upbringing and how his family and his environment influenced him to become the person he is today, and just to become a better person as a whole. Like I said, it's not too complex, but that was just one of my favourite tracks lyrically because I felt like each lyric really meant something. I also do like the maturity he commonly shows in his lyrics. In Welcome to the Rodeo, he acknowledged that he's very aware he won't be able to get a job with his face tattoos, so he uses that for motivation to make a living through his music.
Rodeo, I got tattoos on my face, I use that shit as motivation. I can never get a job, so for my dream I'm dedicated for.
Now, I like that because I rarely ever hear rappers talk about how their face tattoos could affect them getting a job if they ever need to do so. I mean, you could just like not get the face tattoos in the first place, but I get it. Some people like getting them. Some people like them. Tattoos is clearly one of the things that Skies enjoys getting. Then there's the line on Fake about everyone around him telling him that college is necessary to succeed, and he tried to go down that route, but it just wasn't for him. I mean, I personally can really relate to that line as a YouTuber, you know, that's never went to college and just makes his family proud. Every single day. I also like the fact that he talks a fair bit about how he doesn't take Xans, because a lot of rappers promote Xanax in their music nowadays. I mean, I've watched a lot of interviews with Lil Skies, and he says he doesn't take any drugs. The only thing he does is smoke weed. Now, I think he should stop promoting that, because we all know that the devil's lettuce is one of the most dangerous, potent drugs out there, so you might want to ease up on that one a little bit, Mr. Skies, but yeah, apart from that, he really doesn't promote any drugs in his music. Like I said, I like all of that, but I don't think there's enough to warrant me giving him a particularly high rating for this segment. I do like that a large portion of his lyrics are focused on, motivating you and talking about how he achieved his dreams, but I feel like as a subject, he's kind of talked about too much at this point. Just a little bit too much. I don't think he's ever necessarily made me cringe with his lyrics, but he's never done anything that blows me away either. There's also some occasions on songs like Kill For You, where I feel like he starts talking about a subject that could be really interesting and kind of introspective, but he moves away from those topics rather quickly and doesn't really develop on them. So I'm gonna give Skies a 5 out of 10 for lyrics. Like I said, he's pretty much just in the middle here for me. And in part 4, we're bringing that heat, because part 4, it's all about the beats. And again, there isn't really a lot that disappointed me instrumentally from Lil Skies, from his beat selection. Even though the production was definitely a bit cheaper sounding earlier on in his career, there's still a lot of catchy and fun beats to be found on his Good Grades Bad Habits 2 project. The initial track, Some Kind of Love, really surprised me with this vocal sample and really uplifting sound to it as a whole, and it just sounds great. He also raps over some hard banger beats, which I really liked, because at first he didn't really strike me as a rapper that could go off over some hard-hitting beats. But just listen to Drift or Pump 93, and you can't tell me that the beats alone just don't get you gassed up.
Rolling dope, getting high. If a nigga think I'm lacking, then he's in for a surprise. Smoking Pump 93, that's that fire flame. Shawty say she fucking with me, I don't know.
He also sounds fantastic over these kind of moody or emo beats, such as Kill For You and Cloudy Skies. A problem I have with some of his beats though is that, like his flow, like his delivery, some of the beats just don't change up enough to keep my interest. The beat for Strictly Business is basically the same throughout the entire song, and the same can be said for Signs of Jealousy. Then there's the beat for The Click, which is a song that I enjoy for the most part, but on the verses, it's just a reversed string instrumental. And then on the hook, it just switches to a slightly different reversed string instrumental.
Shorty, I ain't worried about his bitch. Boy, you better get some money for you end up in a ditch. Hop in a coupe like, oh yeah, turn on the radio, yeah, baby just let me.
I don't know, it just sounds a little bit monotonous to me. I do feel like Skies picks a lot of great beats. I just wouldn't say they're the main attraction to his music. I'm gonna give Skies a 7.5 out of 10 for his beat selection. And this is because I was still pretty impressed by a lot of his beat selection. A lot of it does go very well with his vocals. And it's not like there's a lot of beats that I thought were mediocre or bad. So yeah, good stuff so far still. And for part 5, we're going to be looking at my overall enjoyment of Lil Skies' music. Well, I'm pleased to say we found another rapper that gets a big CDTV stamp of approval. I wasn't sure what to expect going into this. I mean, having Lil at the start of your name kind of brings connotations of being generic and nothing different, but I have to say, I personally don't feel like that's the case. Out of the 3 projects I've heard from him, surprisingly my favourite is the earliest one from him that I heard, Good Grades Bad Habits Volume 2. It shows a fairly decent range of sounds. You've got bangers like 2016, I Know, and The Sauce, and also some laid back tracks like Always Lit. It's just so solid, even if the audio and production quality isn't super high. The only tracks I didn't like on there were Palace and Regular. Next, for my second favourite, I'd have to go with his Life of a Dark Rose project. This was a good project, but on some of the songs, Skies was just a bit boring or just continued the same flows for too long. On my first listen, I even actually had this as my least favourite project from Skies, but that has changed over time as there's so many songs I replay from here. Not to mention, it's the album where his vocal harmonizing really takes center stage, so I like that. It's a pretty solid album.
Or mixtape, whatever, don't get on my case in the comments.
Then for my least favourite, we have Alone. I still enjoyed a lot of the tracks from this tape, and we get to see Skies' rapping talent on tracks like Life and Pump 93, but this one definitely has more songs that I don't care for than his other projects. But the key thing to note is that I still like it. Guys, I really enjoyed listening to Lil Skies, and he has gained a fan. I'm gonna be eagerly awaiting his next project because he really has impressed me so far. I'm gonna give him an 8.5 out of 10 for enjoyment. I've seen some people say that he's just a typical new age rapper. Yeah, he's not the most technical rapper, he's not super gifted lyrically, rhyme-wise. That's still an assessment I really just don't agree with. I think he's got some real talent, and I really enjoy most of what I've heard from him. So now let's give Lil Skies an overall rating and see where he ranks amongst the other rappers in this series. So overall, Lil Skies scores a 35.5 out of 50, which is a pretty high score for this series, and places him very marginally above Ski Mask the Slump God, can't wait to hear about that one in the comments, and just below Migos, meaning Skies takes our number 4 spot on this list. In case you don't know, that means I really like his music. He's probably one of the most well-balanced rappers I've looked at so far here, and I cannot wait for him to release more music. I have legitimately been listening to his music non-stop for about a month since I started researching for this video. Great stuff, and you can definitely consider me a fan now. Well guys, that is going to be it for the video today. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you guys did enjoy this. I know you did, because you always enjoy worst rappers in the game, and you cannot tell me anything different, okay? Were you guys surprised by how much I liked Lil Skies, and do you like him as much as I did? Genuinely, there's not many other rappers in this series that I felt like I've enjoyed this much. I don't know what it is, but there's just a lot of stuff about his music that appeals to me. Let me know who you would like to see next on this list. The next episode is most likely gonna be someone like Rich the Kid or Lil Xan. I'm not too sure yet. And yeah, I'm not sure how many uploads I'm gonna have in the upcoming week, because this Sunday I'm going to London. I'm going to London for a week, and I'm not taking any of my recording equipment with me. So I basically need to get 2 or 3 videos recorded before I go to London. So hopefully I'll manage to get all those done and I can upload those over the week whilst I'm there. But who knows? Just letting you guys know that. So yeah, thank you so much for watching. You can of course subscribe to my second channel, CDTVProductions. The link will be in the description below. And on that channel I do reactions to new albums, old albums, just anything that's rap. So with all that being said guys, I will hopefully see you all in the next one. And this is your boy, CDTVProductions, signing out.